come to order. We're now holding a meeting of the McClusky FFA chapter. Mr. Vice President, are all officers at their stations?
I shall call the roll of officers, determine if they're at their stations, and report back to you, Mr. President. The Sentinel.
Stationed by the door.
Your duties there.
To this door pass many friends of the FFA. It is my duty to see that the door is open to our friends at all times, and that they are welcome. I care for the meeting room and paraphernalia. I strive to keep the room comfortable and assist the President in maintaining order.
The Reporter.
The reporter is stationed by the flag.
Why by the flag?
As the flag covers the United States of America, so I strive to inform the people, in order that every man, woman, and child may know that the FFA is a national organization that reaches from the state of Alaska to Puerto Rico, and from the state of Maine to Hawaii.
The Treasurer.
Stationed by the emblem of Washington.
Your duties there.
I keep a record of receipts and disbursements, just as Washington kept his farm accounts, carefully and accurately. I encourage thrift among the members and strive to build up our financial standings through savings and investments. George Washington was better able to serve his country because he was financially independent.
The Secretary.
Stationed by the ear of corn.
Your duties there.
I keep an accurate record of all meetings and correspond with other secretaries wherever corn is grown and FFA members meet.
The Advisor.
Here by the owl.
Why stationed by the owl?
The owl is a time-honored emblem of knowledge and wisdom. Being older than the rest of you, I'm asked to advise you from time to time as the need arises. I hope that my advice will always be based on true knowledge and ripening with wisdom. Mr. Vice President, why do you keep the plow at your station?
The plow is the symbol of labor and tillage of the soil. Without labor, neither knowledge nor wisdom can accomplish much. My duties require me to assist at all times in directing the work of our organization. I preside over meetings in the absence of our president, whose place is beneath the rising sun.
Why is the president's station?
The rising sun is a token of a new era in agriculture. If we will follow the leadership of our president, we shall be led out of the darkness of selfishness into the glorious sunlight of brotherhood and cooperation. Mr. President, all officers are at their stations.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. The Secretary will call the roll of members.
We have 6 members and 1 advisor present, Mr. President.
Thank you. FFA members, why are we here?
To practice brotherhood, honor agricultural opportunities and responsibilities, and to develop those qualities of leadership which an FFA membership possess.
May we accomplish our purposes, I now declare this meeting of the McClusky FFA chapter duly open for the transaction of business or attention to any other matters which may properly be presented. Madam Secretary, what is the first item of business?
Educating youth on agriculture and FFA.
Mr. President,
Mr. Vice President.
I move that we hold a day camp for our 4th, 5th, and 6th graders.
I second the motion.
Has been
I
properly
object
moved.
to the consideration of
The
the
consideration of the question has been objected to. Shall the question be considered? Those in favor of considering it, please rise. Please be seated. Those opposed, please rise. Please be seated. There are 2/3 in the affirmative, and the question shall be considered. Is there any discussion on the motion regarding holding a day camp for 4th, 5th, and 6th graders?
Mr. President,
Mr. Reporter.
I think this is a great idea. By doing this, we will encourage all the younger members that when they get up into high school, with possibly joining FFA. So I think everyone should get behind me and vote yes on this motion.
Mr. President.
Mr. Vice President.
I agree with our reporter. Vote yes on this motion. For not only would this be a great way to engage with our younger members, but it would show them that the FFA can help them, and I encourage you to vote yes.
Mr. President,
Madam Secretary.
I don't think that this is a good idea. I think by doing this, we're just going to take classroom time away from both ourselves and from these students that we would be doing this with. I think it'd just be a hassle to do this, so I urge you all to vote no.
Mr. President,
Madam Treasurer.
I encourage every member to vote no on this motion for the following reasons. By having 4th through 6th graders, they're at different maturity levels and their listening skills are different. So I think if we're going to do this, we should have each class separately, so it'll take less class time away. So I urge you all to vote no.
Mr. President,
Mr. Sentinel.
I move to suspend the rules that we do not discuss on this motion.
Is there a second?
I second the motion.
As been properly moved and seconded, that we suspend the rules so we do not debate any farther on this motion. Those in favor, please rise. Please be seated. Those opposed, please rise. Please be seated. The President votes in the negative, and we shall continue discussing on this motion. Is there any discussion on the motion?
I rise to a question question of privilege.
State your question.
It is getting hard for the assembly to hear you. Could you please turn your microphone up a little bit?
Is there any discussion on the motion to hold a day camp for 4th, 5th, and 6th graders?
Mr. President,
Mr. Vice President.
I encourage every member once again to get behind me and vote yes on this motion. Not only is this a great way for our younger kids in the elementary school to get an engagement with us older kids, but it also shows them what the FFA organization stands for, what we are about. I think it would be a great way to get them involved with our group for the future. So vote yes on this motion.
Mr.
Madam
President,
Secretary.
I'm still in objection to this motion. I don't think this is a good idea. The teachers have always had a problem with us going down and taking away from their classroom time. So I think it's going to be a hassle for them. It's going to be hard for us to find a time where they would allow us to come down and take their students from them for a while. So I urge you all to vote no.
Mr. President,
Mr. Sentinel.
I'm also opposed to this motion because our chapter doesn't really have much time right now because we're getting ready for contests and winter CDEs. So I don't think we'll have the time to get out of our schoolwork and stuff, and it won't be good for our chapter. So I urge you all to vote no.
Mr. President,
Madam Treasurer.
hearing the discussion for this motion has swayed my decision. I believe this is a good idea. We don't exactly have to have it during the school day. We can have it on a weekend and kids can come in from home. So I urge you all to vote yes.
Is there any discussion? Discussion?
Mr. President?
Mr. Reporter.
I move to lay this item of business on the table as we have a guest speaker who has to leave in 15 minutes.
I second the motion.
Has been properly moved and seconded that we lay this item of business on the table since we have a guest speaker who must leave in 15 minutes. Those in favor of laying this on the table say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no.
No.
The ayes have it, and this item of business is laid on the table. Mr. Smith, you may speak now. Thank you, Mr. Smith. Madam Secretary, what's the next item of business?
Service fundraiser.
Mr. President,
Mr. Sentinel.
I move that our chapter rent a dunking tank for the next home football game to raise funds for the Codes for Kids program.
I second the motion.
Has been properly moved and seconded that our chapter rents a dunk tank for the next home football game for the Codes for Kids program. Is there any discussion?
Mr.
Mr.
President.
Sentinel.
I think this is a good idea, and everyone should get behind me on this motion because at the football games there are a lot of people there, and they would be able to help with fundraising, and they should have enough money there too. And also the Codes for Kids program, I've heard is a very good program that help kids that don't have their winter clothes, and they would really need them for in North Dakota because it gets really cold. So I really urge everyone to vote yes.
Mr. President,
Mr. Vice President.
I disagree with our previous speaker. Being a football player myself, I know that the games get rather cold at night, and seeing that starting at 7, a lot of people would not show up expecting to go in the dunk tank for us. So I encourage every member to vote against this motion.
Mr.
Madam
President,
Secretary.
I move that we limit debate on this item of business to 5 minutes.
I second the motion.
Has been properly moved and seconded that we limit debate on this item of business to 5 minutes. Those in favor, please rise. Please be seated. Those opposed, please rise. Please be seated. There are 2/3 in the affirmative, and discussion is limited to 5 minutes.
Mr. President,
Madam Treasurer.
I encourage every member to vote no on this motion. As our Vice President said, it gets cold by 7 o'clock at night. So I think by having a dunk tank, we wouldn't have very many volunteers to get in it. And if we do have this, I think we should amend it by saying it starts at 5. So every member vote no.
Mr.
Mr.
President,
Mr. Reporter.
I'm opposed to this motion. I think being that winter CDEs are coming up, I believe we should focus our time on preparing for those so that we can do better at the contest. So I urge everyone to vote no on this motion.
Mr.
Madam
President,
Secretary.
I don't think that this is a good idea. Seeing as we co-op with 2 other schools for football games, in which none of our games are at McClusky, so it'd be a really hard thing to get this organized at one of the football games. So I urge you all to vote no.
Mr. President,
Mr. Vice President.
I move to amend the motion by removing football and substituting it for volleyball.
I second the amendment.
Has been properly moved and seconded that we amend the motion by striking out football and putting in its place volleyball. Is there any discussion on the amendment? Madam Treasurer.
I think volleyball is a much better time to have this. The games start earlier, and we could have it in between the C squad and B squad games. So I urge every member to vote yes on this motion.
Mr. President,
Mr. Vice President.
I agree with the treasurer, seeing for the following reasons. Football is colder, it's later, and we have only 1 football game left at home. And agreeing with the secretary, it's hard to get a cooperation of all 3 chapters together to have such a dunk tank at a football game. And with only 2 teams, or 2 schools co-op for volleyball, it would be an easier feat to accomplish. So I encourage every member to vote yes on the amendment.
Mr. President,
Madam Secretary.
I think that this is a good idea, seeing as we do have some volleyball games in McClusky. I think it'd be really easy to get this organized and we can have it at our own school. So I urge you all to vote yes.
Mr. President,
Mr. Reporter.
I disagree with our previous speaker. I think since we are combined with 2 other schools for football, there would be more funds coming in so that we could donate those funds to the charities. So I urge everyone to vote no.
Mr. President,
Mr. Sentinel.
I disagree with this. I don't think that we should have it during a volleyball game. Like I've been to a couple of volleyball games and there aren't that many people there compared to a football game. So I don't think that we can bring enough funds in to help sponsor the Coach for Kids programs. So I urge everyone to vote no on this motion.
Is there any discussion on the amendment? Discussion? Discussion. Seeing none, we're about to vote on the amendment. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no.
No.
Amendment passes.
Division.
Division has been called for. Those in favor of the amendment, please rise. Please be seated. Those opposed, please rise. Please be seated. The affirmative still has it and the amendment stands. Is there any discussion on the newly amended motion that says we rent a dunk tank for the next home volleyball game to raise funds for the Coach for Kids program?
Mr. President,
Mr. Reporter.
I move that when this meeting adjourns, it resumes tomorrow at 3:00 p.m.
I second the motion.
Has been properly moved and seconded that when this meeting adjourns, it adjourns to meet tomorrow at 3 p.m. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no.
No.
Motion passes. The meeting will resume tomorrow, or when this meeting adjourns, it will resume tomorrow at 3 p.m. Is there any discussion on the motion that we rent a dunk tank at the next home volleyball game to raise funds for the Coach for Kids program? Discussion? Discussion. Seeing none, we're about to vote on the motion. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no.
No.
Motion passes. We shall hold a dunk tank at the next volleyball game to raise funds for Coach for Kids. Madam Secretary, do you have a record of any further business which should now be transacted?
I have none, Mr. President.
Does any member know of any new or unfinished business which should now come before this assembly? We are about to adjourn this meeting of the McClusky FFA chapter. As we mingle with others, let's be diligent in labor, just in our dealings, courteous to everyone, and above all, honest and fair in the game of life. Fellow FFA members, please join me in a salute to our flag.